We need to talk about Ricardo Pepi. Last week it was reported by Tom Bogert, EPL club Fulham had made a $35 million bid for American striker Ricardo Pepi. And then PSV said, nah, I don't think so. They were going to hold on to him. This was surprising for a couple of different reasons. I think number one, the first thing I did was check transfer market, and I was like, $35 million seems like an awful lot for Ricardo Pepi. And sure enough, they had Ricardo's transfer value around $17 million, which is more in line with, I guess, what he was purchased for from Augsburg. Now, transfer market is not the end-all be-all, but at least it's a place where you can go and get a relative idea of the value of players in world soccer. The second point, and maybe more importantly, is that Ricardo Pepi doesn't play soccer. I mean, he plays soccer, but just not very much. So you have two things in combination here. You have a club coming in offering a bid that is significantly more than the player's transfer value, and you have a club that seems to not want to play this guy. So together, it seems like an excellent opportunity to say, sayonara, Ricardo Pepi, thank you for everything you've done for us, but it's time for you to move on. That's not what PSV did. At that point, I had to ask, what the hell is going on? I needed to investigate. That's exactly what I did, and that's exactly what this episode of the Yank Report is all about. What's up? My name is Sam. Welcome to the Yank Report. If you want to hear about Ricardo Pepi, strap in. If you were to try to build an American soccer player in a lab that would bring balance to the force, you may very well design and build Ricardo Pepi. This is a Mexican-American player from South Texas, a player with a background that is very similar to a lot of American soccer fans, specifically the type of American soccer fan that U.S. soccer desperately covets and wants to change into U.S. men's national team fans. Pepi got his debut with FC Dallas in 2019. He had an okay season in 2020 for a young player. 17 matches played and 2 goals, but I don't think anybody expected what was to come in 2021 when Pepi got 13 goals in 31 matches and absolutely set the league on fire. That same year, Pepi would get his first goal for the national team in World Cup qualifying in a game away in Honduras, a goal that many say saved World Cup qualifying for the U.S. It seemed like a star was born. It seemed like the U.S.'s prayers at striker were answered. It seemed like we had a future striker superstar, and it wouldn't take long before the big clubs from around the world came calling. It would be FC Augsburg in the Bundesliga that won the Pepi sweepstakes for a record $20 million transfer fee. It was a record for an American transfer out of MLS at the time. It was also the most expensive transfer in Augsburg history at the time, which I thought was a great deal because a lot of times you see these Americans going to these super clubs where they're then loaned out and they're kind of lost in the shuffle and never really given a fair opportunity. That wouldn't be the case at Augsburg. They spent real money on Ricardo Pepi and they were going to try to get a return on their investment. Unfortunately, it's not exactly how that went down. In Pepi's season and a half with Augsburg, he would put up pretty terrible numbers. 0 goals scored, 0 assists, only 5 starts altogether. He looked off the pace. He looked unconfident. He looked lethargic and slow, as if the game was moving too fast for him. It was not a good scene, and this dip in form could not happen at a worse time for Pepi because that summer was the 2022 World Cup. And although Pepi started World Cup qualifying extremely hot, looking like a player for the future, by that time his dip in form had seen him lose his starting striker position with the national team, and Pepi was not selected in the 26 for Greg Berhalter's 2022 World Cup squad, a decision that still remains extremely controversial for U.S. men's national team and especially Ricardo Pepi fans. After just a season and a half at Augsburg, Pepi would find himself loaned out to Groningen in the Eredivisie. Now, if you know anything about the Eredivisie, you know that it's a pretty top-heavy league, and the teams underneath those top 2 or 3 can be not very good. And in Groningen's case, this is a very small club. If you look at their payroll numbers, they're actually significantly less that of FC Dallas. So this is a pretty low moment for Ricardo Pepi, going from that high of being the U.S.'s next great player to finding himself at a relatively small club in the Netherlands, looking to put it back all together. But credit to Ricardo Pepi, he did exactly what you're supposed to do in that situation. He played 29 games that season with 28 starts, had 12 goals, 3 assists, and recorded over 2,000 minutes for the first time in his career since he left MLS. This was enough to give Pepi a second chance at the big time. Dutch super club PSV came in and offered a $9.8 million transfer fee for Ricardo Pepi, and Augsburg was happy to unload the player. Now, this was a pretty bad scene. To say Ricardo Pepi flopped at Augsburg, I think would be an understatement. The club took a significant loss when they signed him and seemed very anxious to just wash their hands of the situation and move on. Now, at PSV, Pepi had a fresh start, and I think he had an exciting opportunity. He was coming in as the backup striker behind club legend Luuk de Jong, who was up there in years, and it seemed like Pepi would have an opportunity to compete with de Jong, maybe break in, and maybe find himself a starter by the end of the season. But that's not how that went down. De Jongs have a long history of breaking American hearts, and in this case, Luuk had a career renaissance and was just scoring goals left and right, and he was also an Iron Man, just seeming like he was going to start every single game and take up every single minute possible. In his first 2 seasons with PSV, Pepi had a total of 6 starts and around 1,000 minutes combined for those first 2 years. That's not exactly what we were hoping for when Pepi arrived at the club. However, year 3 was supposed to be different. Finally, at long last, Luuk de Jong said goodbye to the club. PSV were not going out and finding another striker in the transfer window. This would be Pepi's time to shine. Unfortunately, that's when disaster struck once again. Pepi would pick up a serious knee injury that prematurely brought an end to his 2025 season, saw him miss the entirety of the offseason, including the Gold Cup, and then more injuries to start the following season. In that period, PSV decided to take Guus Til, one of the midfielders with the club, convert him into a striker, and unfortunately, he played pretty well. They were scoring a lot of goals and winning a lot of games, so much so that whenever Ricardo Pepi did return from injury, the manager didn't want to mess up a good thing, and Ricardo Pepi remained on the bench. This was too much. At this point, this was supposed to be Ricardo's season, and once again, he's finding himself on the bench, this time for a converted midfielder. Things were getting very frustrating. U.S. men's national team fans were losing their minds. People were saying Pepi has to get out of this situation. So when news came that Fulham were looking to offer a large sum of money for Ricardo Pepi, it seemed like this was finally Ricardo's opportunity to get out of there. But at this point, you may be wondering, okay, so this guy flopped at his first opportunity in the Bundesliga. He rebuilds himself at a very small club in Groningen. He's sitting behind Luuk de Jong for a long period of time, not getting very many minutes. Why would a club like Fulham want to spend $35 million on a player that has hardly played soccer since he left MLS? Well, there's something I haven't been telling you. Sure, Ricardo Pepi hasn't been playing many minutes for PSV, but he has been playing minutes. And when he plays, my God, Ricardo Pepi is scoring goals. And I mean a lot of goals. In Pepi's first season with PSV, despite only getting 1 start, despite playing less than 500 minutes, he was able to score 7 goals. In his second season, despite only having 5 starts, he got 11 goals. This year, he's had 7 starts and he's got 7 goals. And though some of these goals are coming against weak opponents in the Eredivisie in garbage time, not all of them are. Some of these are in Champions League against some of the best clubs in the world. And whenever you take a look at some of his advanced statistics, it gets even weirder. In Pepi's first season with PSV, he had 1.3 goals per 90 with 1.34 expected goals per 90. In 2024, 1.43 goals per 90 with 0.77 xG per 90. This season, 0.91 goals per 90 with 0.67 xG. I don't know if you're familiar with the goals per 90 statistic. I mean, essentially, a good starting striker should be expected to get at least half a goal a game, so 0.5 goals per 90. As you get higher than that, getting closer to 1 goal per 90, you're talking about some of the better and better and better strikers in the world. When we get around 1 goal per 90, if you're able to do that consistently over a long period of time, you're talking about Erling Haaland, Robert Lewandowski, some of the absolute best strikers in the world. Anywhere above 1 goal per 90, then you're getting into rare air. Then you're talking about Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, some of those great generational players. Now, I'm not saying that Ricardo Pepi is Messi. I'm not saying that he's Haaland. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying over the last 3 seasons, this guy is around or over 1 goal per 90 minutes. Despite not starting any games, this man cannot get a start, and he is putting up crazy numbers. Now, I know what you're thinking. At least I know what I hope you're thinking. You're thinking that this is not a big enough sample size, that we need to see this guy start a full season in order to see if he can continue to produce these numbers. And yeah, I think that's what every American soccer fan is saying. Let's see this guy start a full season. So let's go back to the start of the video. Fulham was willing to offer $35 million for Ricardo Pepi, a player that has hardly started in the last 3 seasons. These are all very good signs and very good things for Ricardo Pepi. It seems like PSV really want to hold on to this guy for the rest of the season. They have since come out and said they will only accept an exorbitant transfer fee for Ricardo Pepi, because apparently $35 million isn't exorbitant. And this may be a very good thing, because if you recall, the last time Ricardo Pepi made a big transfer, it was ahead of the World Cup. This time around, Ricardo Pepi is at a good situation. He's at a club that obviously wants him, and I'm assuming if they're willing to turn down that amount of money for a player, an amount of money that would represent a very good return on investment for what they put down on the player, you would think that they have him in their plans for the rest of the season. This time he seems poised to be one of the players in the 26 for Mauricio Pochettino's 2026 USA World Cup team. An opportunity to fulfill the prophecy of the prince that was promised, the one that was supposed to bring balance to the force. I, for one, am really excited about what the future holds for Ricardo Pepi, but I really hope for the rest of the season they give this man some starts, because one thing we know is true. When you play him, he scores goals. Let's take a look at some of the best comments from last video. Chase1649 says, "This inspires me to speak to my family again." Okay, Chase, glad the Yank Report's bringing the family back together.